We'll continue the LSU football conversation as Wilson Alexander, the Advocate, joins us this morning as he was at the press conference yesterday, at the game on Saturday, and joins us to talk some LSU football. Wilson, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I want to get it started with yesterday's press conference, the big news that came out of Garrett Nussmeier's torso injury. Obviously, nothing too in-depth on what the injury, is. Obviously, he said that it started in camp and said that it isn't something that has held him back on Saturdays, but during the week. What was some of your takeaways and your thoughts on what we learned yesterday about the LSU starting quarterback?
It lines up with what Kelly had said near the end of camp about how they were managing Garrett's workload when there was at least two practices that were open to the media in which Garrett did not throw. And Kelly said it was because he had thrown a lot over the summer. They were managing his workload. Then he kind of gives the same reason for why this injury happened, that he had thrown a lot going into this season and over the summer. And that's kind of why the injury happened. The timing of it feels like it was convenient for Kelly to bring this up now when the offense has been struggling and Garrett hasn't been playing great. And he was taking a lot of heat over the weekend. You kind of were able to redirect a little bit by then saying, oh, well, our quarterback has been hurt and that we haven't been able to practice with him enough. But this also wasn't necessarily a shocking thing to hear. There had been rumblings of this kind of injury, of some kind of in this vicinity that Garrett had been dealing with, that just nobody, at least I know, I hadn't been able to confirm. And obviously he was always good to go on Saturdays. But I think could be affecting this offense. As Kelly said, he hasn't been able to practice fully throughout the week, every week, going into games. Maybe that's the reason that this vertical passing game hasn't looked there, and that Garrett's been off at times. Maybe he hasn't been throwing as much leading into games as he normally would like to. Garrett was asked, I asked him last Tuesday about his interception against Louisiana Tech. I said, has an injury or maybe a mechanical issue or something else contributed to that interception? He said no, that he just underthrew that football. But, this has been going on, and, if it is something where he is on the other side of it, as Kelly said yesterday, and they're able to start doing more during practice, then maybe we'll be able to see a better version of Garrett Nussmeier moving forward.
And kind of, I guess, two parts of what you said, where the timing of BK saying it and Nussmeier being on the other side of it. Do you think maybe that plays a part in why it comes up now, is that it is something that they're on the other side of, and it's not like, I guess, almost playing your hand to the opponent of saying Nussmeier's hurt, and maybe holding that under wraps going into Clemson and Florida, but opening up about it now that it seems like maybe they are on the other side of it?
Yeah, that could definitely be part of the reason. Because it was interesting, at the very top of the broadcast, Greg McElroy on Saturday mentioned that Nussmeier had been dealing with some injuries, is what he said, and that LSU, coming into the Florida game, had finally been able to practice with him more, which is kind of, again, what Kelly said to us yesterday about how last week they were starting to ramp up, that they'll be able to continue to do more coming into this week. And so maybe that's just it, like you're saying, now that maybe it isn't as much of a concern, or it isn't affecting him maybe as much during the week of practice, maybe now that's why they're bringing it up. But, in those pre-production meetings, there were several things that McElroy said that indicated they had talked to Joe Sloan. And so, this had come up already in those meetings, and it was mentioned in some way, not necessarily torso injury, but injury mentioned on a national broadcast. So, that could also be part of it now that it's was already kind of out in the open a little bit.
And now that it has become, I guess, confirmed by Brian Kelly, do you expect is there any real benefit to playing Garrett Nussmeier against the Southeastern Louisiana team that you feel like LSU should be able to handle business with or without him? But if it's time that heals these wounds or heals his injury, would it not be beneficial to maybe sit him Saturday?
Yeah, I've seen that point made. I sort of think to the other side of it. This is a Southeastern Louisiana team that you should be pretty handily, but Garrett has already been playing through this for 3 games. We'll probably play him for a half. He's looked like it looks like he and the receivers need to keep working on things, that he needs reps. If he's on the other side of it and has turned a corner as Kelly says, so it maybe isn't affecting him as much anymore, then you probably should continue to play him so that they can work on these things in a game setting. Because this is the last chance you're going to have to do that against a team that you should be, overmatched, that you're overmatched against. Going into the Ole Miss game and then the rest of SEC play, I would play him. I would play him for a half. If the offense is still struggling and you aren't big enough at halftime to pull him, then that would be an issue. And maybe I see where people would say like just sit him, but I feel like those are valuable reps that Garrett needs to be getting right now as this offense struggles. They need to be able to come together before the heat of SEC play.
What is it like, after just 2 short years ago, we were sitting and watching an LSU team that you were just begging for a stop, like just could not stop a nosebleed. And now you see a defense that goes out there and gets 5 interceptions, one being run back for a touchdown, and has just been absolutely dominant through 3 games.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could just take the 2023 offense,
right,
and this defense, and put them together? That would be lovely. I was walking out of the stadium on Saturday night with my colleague Reed Darcy, and Reed compared it to whack-a-mole. The whole Kelly tenure to whack-a-mole, where you hit the special teams, then you hit the defense, and then you hit the offense, and nothing is all just staying down at one time. There's always I thought about this, I think at some point last year, there's always a hole to patch on a boat kind of thing with this team. There's always water wanting to leak in somewhere. The way that this over the past 4 years, the way that this has gone, and it's got to be so frustrating for LSU fans that you cannot just have everything clicking all at one time. And it feels like this is the year when we're watching this defense that should be the case. That this offense, with a second-year starter at quarterback who threw for 4,000 yards last year, and a lot of talent at the skill positions, and an offensive line that has been okay in pass pro in the biggest games. I mean, they played. I think they held up better than I would have expected against Clemson and against Florida. But this all should be working, and it just quite isn't yet. And that's got to be really frustrating. But at least it's frustrating if you're 3-0 and you have a chance to keep working on these things.
And with that offense, obviously, it's going to raise some question marks, whether it be about Sloan or Garrett Nussmeier. But if you had to put that, I guess, try to encapsulate what is quote unquote wrong with the offense, is it easy enough to say that you look at a Garrett Nussmeier injury and say that's why, or is this becoming a year 2 with Sloan and they've tried a lot of different things, nothing of which seems to stick, and you point in that direction? So that's more of my question is, I guess if you had to lay the blame at somebody's feet, is it as easy to say that Nussmeier was hurt, or is this now what's his identity as an offensive play caller?
Yeah, I think that's a question that we're going to have to let play out, frankly, because if Garrett has been hurt and that's been limiting their ability to practice in the vertical passing game over the past few weeks, and they've had to be careful with him, and so he's kind of rusty, then I feel like you can't really make a full evaluation until probably after the South Carolina game, maybe the Vanderbilt game. That's a month away from now. But otherwise, if it hasn't been affecting him that much, and this is kind of more of an excuse, then there is probably some issues with, I don't know. I guess I kind of need to see it play out. There's so much that's kind of wrong right now offensively. It's hard to lay blame at any one person's feet. I think Garrett's got to play better. Joe's probably got to do a better job. Juwan Johnson can't fumble in the red zone. Right. The run blocking has to be better. There's some offensive penalties that just stunted drives. I mean, there's a lot. I think the blame goes to a lot of different places. Obviously, Sloan has to shoulder a lot of that as the offensive coordinator. But I don't know until Garrett is maybe playing and clicking at all cylinders that we can necessarily assign that blame at this point. That's just me. I'm sure other people might think differently, but that's just sort of where I feel like it's hard to do that right now.
You bring up Juwan Johnson. I feel like in that game, obviously Caden Durham got the most carries and I think was out there for a considerable amount. You saw a lot of Juwan Johnson, I feel like, on Saturday from what I remember, and he seems to be the number 2 guy behind Caden Durham and someone that they even had out there. And there were times where I sat back and I was like, well, I feel like I haven't seen 29 on the field in a while. What have been your takeaways when you look at the run game, but just kind of maybe the personnel and the use of Juwan Johnson and his increased role as the season's moved on?
Well, the run game, to start with, just as we all know, has not been good enough. It needs to be a lot better. Which is weird because I feel like it was good enough to do what it needed to do against Clemson,
right,
in some ways, and then it just hasn't really sustained. And the run blocking grades on PFF, which personally I always take with a grain of salt, but against Florida they were across the offensive line pretty bad. They got to be able to run the football a lot better than they are. Juwan, though, yeah, he's played a lot more than I would have expected coming into preseason camp and even through most of preseason camp because he was a quarterback for a while there at practice. But then with LSU, when it has the personnel there at running back, like he has stepped into a role and given them something there. I mean, he's got some burst. You see the speed. He's a natural carrier of the football. And I think that he is probably further along physically than Harlan Berry is right now, and he's faster, a little bit more decisive probably than Caleb Jackson. So it makes sense that he would be your number 2. Other than the fumble, he's done some decent things with his touches, and so if he can just hold on to the football, then I think LSU is going to keep using him in a lot of ways, and he kind of gives you some options if you want to do something kind of tricky because he does have some experience throwing the football. That could maybe be something that LSU pulls out of its hat at one point.
Yeah, and another, I guess, a bright spot from Saturday that I want to bring up. You talk about the whack-a-mole of offense, defense, special teams. What a performance from Grant Chadwick Saturday night, and what has been a rough, I guess, couple of years in Brian Kelly's tenure. There have been some special teams blunders and mistakes throughout the first couple of seasons. Now with Ramos and Chadwick, you feel like you're in a good spot. What were your takeaways or your thoughts looking at the special teams group on Saturday?
They came up big. Really, they did. I mean, Ramos connecting on his field goals, Chadwick putting Florida inside the 24 times. Not what did I say? Yeah, Chadwick. And with a lot of distance on his punts too, able to flip the field. That was crucial for LSU because, as Kelly said, they really did in the second half start trying to play to that defense and just deal with field position. And Kelly said there were 3 instances when analytics said to go for it on 4th down, and he punted anyway. And if you're going to do that, then your punter needs to do a good job. And Grant Chadwick did. This punting was such an issue for LSU last year, and it was a little inconsistent for the first few games. And then Grant Chadwick really turned it on against Florida. So if he can maintain that, then LSU is going to have a weapon, as he was on Saturday in the punting game.
Another bright spot that I want to ask about, talking about improving from before to this season, the safety play to me is night and day from 2023, 24 to 25, where I'm not going to name any names of in the past, but it's been rough. And then now you see A.J. Halsey, TaMarcus Cooley, Deshaun Spears just go out there and be dominant for this LSU defense. Talk about the job that they did.
It's like watching the tape of them. It's like refreshing. It's cleansing. Yes. Like it's
like
after watching tape of the safeties for the past few years, it's like, this beautiful. Is what it's supposed to look like a little bit better. A.J. Halsey in particular has impressed me. I mean, some of those open field tackles where he was just laying dudes out was fun. He's comes downhill decisively, and then he makes a big hit, and then he's not hesitant at all. He's a good tackler in the open field. He's played really well. Cooley's played well. Obviously, Cooley was the one in coverage on that touchdown, but that was also a great throw by DJ Lagway. Yeah. So it's kind of a little hard to totally fault him there. Sometimes you got to tip your cap. And then Spears stepping up. I mean, Spears is still only playing in kind of a reserve role. I mean, coming in on 3rd down and being sort of like at least against Florida, like rover in the middle of the field or something. Only plays 9 snaps and has 2 interceptions. I mean, made the most of his playing time. And that's great to see from a sophomore who, top 100 recruit. You wanted to kind of see this start to come out for him here in year 2. And he's got some older guys ahead of him on the depth chart, but he's making the most of when he is on the field. LSU, it seemed like it really hit on these safeties in the portal with Halsey and Cooley. That was crucial for this team. And it's made such a difference because now you've got safety play that you like. You've got Mansour Delane locking down one side of the field. You've got DJ Pickett starting to get more and more snaps on the other side and rotating with PJ Woodland. This is a secondary that, let's let the season play out before we say like, oh, this is, full on DBU is back and all that. But it is, 5 interceptions and 3 of how many from your safeties? 4 of those from your safeties.
Yeah,
they played all right.
yeah, they did pretty good. Looking ahead to this Saturday, is there anything that you are maybe focused on or looking for to see LSU do, or maybe a player or something against Southeastern on Saturday?
Throw the football, throw it deep. That's what I would like to see. Obviously you want to be able to, run the ball and all of those things, but I feel like that's something that you should just be able to do against Southeastern. If they can't against Southeastern, then that is a major red flag. But this is where if Garrett has turned a corner, as Kelly said yesterday, and you're able to start working on the deep passing game more in practice, then let's see it in the game on Saturday. They need to get Chris Hilton more involved. I want to see a little bit more out of Nick Anderson.
Yeah.
Barry Brown has been great, but I also know he's got speed to stretch the field. They need to start showing those things and being able to hit on those things before they go to Ole Miss to inspire some confidence. If LSU scores less than 40 points in this game, that's a concern. They should be able to run up the score here as much as they choose to, and that's what I want to see. I want to see the offense absolutely hit, or at least get a lot closer than what we have seen the first 3 weeks.
I agree. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us as always. All the great insight. We'll talk to you again soon, and make sure you ask the right questions in the press conferences. Be careful.
Yes, I will do my best. I will do my best. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. There he is, Wilson Alexander from The Advocate.